It's the story of an American held in a dark Venezuelan prison.
Then all of a sudden, they all kind of lined up. They pointed their guns at me. And this is the point where I thought, I'm going to die today.
I'm Becky Bruce. I spent a year working on Hope in Darkness, which now has more than 2 million downloads. Find it on kslpodcast.com or wherever you listen to podcasts.
In today's episode of Project Recovery,
I was just a walking zombie, and to make it better was I would drink about it, to the point where I couldn't get out of bed without drinking.
make sure you listen to the end. Find us on Facebook at Project Recovery. We'll have that and much more coming up. Hey, welcome to Project Recovery, a podcast about addiction. More importantly, it's about recovery, and it's brought to you by our friends at knowyourscript.org, Matt. And because of Know Your Script, we're allowed to do this for at least another year.
Isn't that great?
Yeah, and I think it's such a great resource for people to go check it out. So if you want to know more about Know Your Script, go to their website, knowyourscript.org, and they've got all kinds of information for you. But speaking of information, Dr. Matt, we were kind of talking before the mics were turned on.
Yeah.
And you said, well, actually, my PhD is in...
It was psychometric statistics of the measurement of personality disorders.
And so we started
So it really doesn't have anything to do with direct patient care.
Okay, but it was about statistics and goals.
Yeah,
and the reason I want to bring that up is because how important do you think it is for a goal for those in recovery?
To
set a goal.
To set a goal. Oh, it's super important. But here's the problem with goal setting. We sort of touched on this when I think I surprised you and I said I don't set New Year's resolution goals. Is because a goal you have to ask why. Why this goal? Is it a reasonable goal? Like, why would I set this particular goal? Does it represent anything reasonable and measurable? Mm-hmm. Right? So, like, if we wanted to grow our podcast, for example, we wouldn't just pick an arbitrary number. We would, like, represent, like, is it a 10% growth? You know, compare it to other podcasts? How fast do they grow? You know, what's the percentage of growth on Joe Rogan's podcast? And then we would make a meaningful goal, because then you can do the how. That's what everybody wants to do. Mm-hmm. And that's where New Year's resolutions stumble, is everyone just focuses on how. Oh, I'm going to go to the gym. That's how I'm going to get in shape. And it's like, no. You got to start with the why. Why is it this number? What's this goal? And then you can have a reasonable steps for how. And then you can measure what you're doing. So it kind of goes in a certain order. And if you get out of order, you're probably going to fail at your goal.
Because I bring this up because for the past year, I've been working out with these two guys up in Ogden. And I follow their workout routine.
Okay.
And so every time I go there, they go, well, what are we doing? I go, I don't know. I'm just following you guys. And the guy has a conversation with me. He goes, but you don't want to measure? And I go, well, I mean, I guess I kind of do. But in my head, me just being here is better than not me being there.
So that might be the goal, though. That's what I was just going to say. You may not realize, he may not realize, and you may not realize what your actual goal is. I think your goal initially was, I've got to work out. Working out was absolutely instrumental in you staying sober, getting sober and staying sober. It was one of the main things you did in residential treatment. It's one of the main things you've done every day since then. And so that's your goal. Now, it may be time to modify, change, or improve that goal. Say, okay, you've stuck with it for over 2 years straight.
You know what it is? It's 885 days.
Okay, 885 days of working out. Wow, that's impressive, by the way. So that goal, we might at this point say, that's accomplished. Now maybe you need to talk to these guys and have them help you set a reasonable next level goal so that you do have something to measure when you're at the gym like they do.
So the other night I was asked to speak at Pinnacle Recovery, where I went to inpatient treatment. Uh-huh. And so I did a Zoom meeting with everybody. And we were talking about just kind of, you know, everything that goes on. And my deal was, you know, they were asking me what questions of, you know, how I got sober, what were my goals and all that. And my thing was, I remember when I just wanted to stay sober for a year. I said, that was my goal. I'm going to get sober for a year. And before I knew it, I was sober for a year. And then I sat down and I was like, now what? So then I went, let's do another year. And so I just keep doing those incremental increases throughout it. Once I hit that goal, I set a new goal and I try to achieve it. And so, a lot of times people will go, I want to be sober for the rest of my life. Now that is my goal.
Yeah.
But how am I going to achieve that? So I'm going to achieve it step by step.
So we also should probably throw in the mix a conversation about an outcome goal and a process goal. And those go together and they're very important. An outcome goal would be, I want to be sober for a year. You could say, okay, that's the outcome I'm after. But what are the process steps? What are the little goals that I need to engage in every day in order to a year from now be able to say I stayed sober? And sometimes people actually think of those as goals, and sometimes they just kind of say, well, I'm not going to drink. And you and I both know that's a little bit precarious if a person is just saying, well, I'm not going to drink, that's how I'm going to stay sober. So one of your process goals is working out every single day.
Working out, being mindful, being present, working on my program. And I think you just touched on it right there. There's a lot of people who go, well, I'm just not going to drink for a year. Mm-hmm. Well, you know what? That's a goal. And I think there's a lot of people who could just do it out of sure will
but
and white
it's
knuckle.
Arbitrary, though, right? Why a year?
Yeah.
Why a year?
If you're not going to do any of the work
for some reason, if the person has never been sober for a whole year before, then okay, maybe that is meaningful. But if it's a meaningful goal, but if there aren't process steps, meaning process goals, little goals that it's like a map. You pick highways and byways to get to where you need to go, and if you follow all those, you end up at your destination. For people who want to stay sober, you can't just strike out, across the map and not pay attention to where you're headed. You're not going to get to where you need to be.
And that brings us back to what a lot of people have said in the recovery world. You become a dry drunk. You still have all the problems, all the emotionals, all the things you were hiding from, all the things you were trying to numb. You still have most of those there, but you're just not drinking to cope with them. You're still miserable. You're not in the right mindset.
Absolutely. Some of the process goals that would help a person not be a dry drunk would be, I'm going to exercise every day. I'm going to go to, 90 in 90. I'm going to do my AA steps. I'm going to complete that. I'm going to work with a sponsor. I'm going to go to therapy and figure out my trauma. We've talked about how many people on this show, a lot of their addiction has to do with not understanding and not working through their trauma of childhood, for example. Those are all process steps. I bet you if a person sat down and with maybe the help of a therapist or a sponsor and made some process goals, then that 1 year outcome goal of staying sober for a year, fairly easy to accomplish if you're doing your steps every day.
I love it. And so I think it's important to set goals, but I think it's more important to know why.
Yeah, they have to be meaningful. Why are we setting a goal? I can just tell you right now, in research, for example, back to the whole statistics and everything, if we want to measure something, we can measure it with statistics, but it's not meaningful if you don't know why you've set that goal. Why am I measuring this? Back to the research I did for my dissertation, was how to measure personality disorders with these two main tests that we use and compare them together. We want to know which one was better. So it was sort of like a psychology nerd smackdown.
Yeah.
Which test is better
like the
on
Pepsi
measuring
Coke
these things?
Challenge.
Exactly. And so that's what we did. And now all of a sudden the measurements we did made sense. They were meaningful because we could say this was better here and that was better there, and that kind of stuff. And same thing with our personal goals. If we don't really have a good reason why we're doing them, it gets old after a while.
So what is better, Pepsi or Coke?
You know what? I'm so off the sodas, but back in the day, I would say I was a Coke man.
Yeah. My older brother, who believes in Sasquatches, drinks Pepsi.
Does he?
Yeah.
Is that a correlation, Sasquatch? Because I'm the cryptozoology. That would be my next PhD. I want to know where the chupacabra is and Sasquatch.
I love that. Hey, I do want to say thank you for continuing another year with me on this wonderful podcast. I know we're making a difference, and we have a lot bigger things hopefully coming up in the next year.
I think, we have had a couple great conversations recently about things that we hope we can do, that we're planning to try to make happen, and I'm really looking forward to it.
All right, and our guest today is Savannah. She's going to talk about her journey and why she's sober today and what she's doing to give back. Stick around. You're listening to Project Recovery.
I'm Dave Cawley, investigative journalist and host of the podcast Cold. Don't miss Cold's new Season 3, where I look into the unsolved disappearance of Cherie Warren, a woman last seen leaving her job at a Salt Lake City office in 1985. Police cast suspicion on Cherie's estranged husband and boyfriend, but never made any arrests or recovered Cherie's remains. Find Cold Season 3, The Search for Cherie, anywhere you get your podcasts.
Welcome back to Project Recovery, a podcast about addiction. More importantly, it's about recovery. Dr. Matt, our guest today, she's gorgeous, she's vivacious, she's bubbly, and she's a little scared.
Are you scared, Savannah?
I'm a little nervous.
A little nervous? That's okay. I think a little bit of nervousness, anytime a person is presenting anything, is good. It kind of gets you ready and the adrenaline going, so you're going to do great.
But let's go down that road just a little bit. What are you nervous about? Are you nervous about meeting the doctor? Are you nervous about telling your story, or just putting it out there for everybody to hear?
I think saying it for the first time for everyone to hear. I'm worried that I won't say it the right way. It's a silly thing to be afraid of, isn't it?
Is there a wrong way? It's your story.
I don't think there is. Maybe I'm scared of not saying enough. I don't know.
Okay, so let's start from the beginning. Dr. Matt always likes to know a little bit about you, where you're from, who you grew up with, kind of, your family setting.
So my story, family setting, it all begins in Idaho Falls, Idaho. I had a pretty good upbringing, honestly. My parents were married until I was in about fourth grade when they got divorced, but I didn't see any of that. They didn't involve me or my brothers whatsoever. I never saw any fighting or unhealthy behavior. Honestly, they kept that all away from us. And my parents spent time taking turns with us. Like, my mom would stay with us for a month, and my dad would stay with his mom, and then my dad would stay with us for a month until...
So you guys could stay in the same family home?
Yeah.
Is that why? Yeah.
Yeah.
And, sometimes that can be kind of hard for kids, back to your comment about, not seeing the fighting or the discontent between your parents. I think out of the two, it's the better option. But sometimes I've talked to lots of kids where and now, to be honest, I think my kids too, when I got divorced, they didn't see much of that. And they were kind of like, hey, this is kind of coming out of left field. Did you guys feel a little bit surprised that your parents separated?
Yeah, of course. I don't think as children you don't want to see that. I didn't really take it as hard as both of my brothers. I have an older brother. He's 4 years older than me. He's 30 now. And then my younger brother definitely took it hard too. Honestly, though, I don't remember a whole lot myself as far as being upset. I did find an old journal entry where I wrote about being upset, but it wasn't that bad from what I can recall.
Yeah. But, I come from a divorced family, and unfortunately, we were the kind of family, if my parents were fighting, everybody knew, including the neighborhood. You know what I mean? It was just one of those boisterous, loud families. They're all kind of like me. And I can tell you right now, I'm 47. And a secret dream I have is that my parents are still together. I mean, as silly as that sounds, but you know what I mean? I think we're all sold on this, this family dynamic that I would love that still to be happening. I know it wouldn't, and I know that's not going to happen with me and my ex-wife, but I wonder if my kids, think about that. And I don't think I've ever sat down and really talked to my kids. I think they know why the divorce happened, but they don't know all the details. And I think there's probably going to be a time where I have to sit them down and go, all right, guys, here's how it all went down.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think to a degree, there's probably stuff between you and your wife that they don't need to know about. Yeah, at any age is probably not important.
Yeah,
but I think you and your wife do a good job of being friends.
Yeah.
In front of the kids, and I think that makes a big difference for kids. I would assume, Savannah, your parents, that's a pretty big effort. I've known other people who've done similar things where, in order to keep stability for the kids, mom and dad kind of make some sacrifices of sharing that time in the family house, at least for a while, so that the kids can adjust. So parents can definitely make divorce easier on the kids and maybe obviously upsetting, but like you said, it doesn't really seem like a childhood trauma. Mm-hmm. Or, parents can blow up everyone's lives during the divorce time and make it really hard.
But according to you, as you can recall, it wasn't that traumatic for you.
No.
So life continues to go on. So do you end up staying in your same house?
Yeah, it continues. And around the age of 12, I believe, my dad bought his first house. So when I was 12, we had another house to go to. And we would spend like 2 weeks with him, and then we'd move back into my mom's for 2 weeks there. And that's how we lived until I was 18. And that wasn't bad either. Honestly, I would get kind of settled after 2 to 3 weeks at one house, and it would be frustrating to have to pack all my things up again and basically move in with my mom and then get settled again. But each home was equally positive too. I'm really grateful for my parents. I think they're both amazing people, and they provided good homes for me. My dad's house, however, is where I was exposed to alcohol.
So your dad drank and your mom didn't?
Yeah.
Did your parents remarry or have partners?
My dad remarried. How old was I? Maybe I was 13 when he remarried. So I had a stepmom. That wasn't very fun at first.
That can be tough, tough for the step-parent as well, knowing, how to manage, that role. Are you really a parent? Are you a friend? Are you something in between? I usually try to guide step-parents to be kind of mentors. You're not really a friend because you don't want to sink to that level. That can be precarious. And you definitely don't want to, act like their biological parent. So kind of the mentor middle ground. But you said it was hard for you to adjust to having a stepmom?
Yeah, and I know it was hard for her. I know she definitely struggled in that in-between of where her place was with me and my brothers. But for the most part, too, she did her best, and I was at the weird age, like 13, 14. I was, like, really not liking it. And I had a stepsister, too. And that was just all hard. And we definitely had our ups and downs around that time.
But that's where you're first introduced to alcohol. Do you remember at what age you first tried it?
I had to be 13 or 14. My dad drank, from what I can remember, I think he drank every evening. And there was the liquor cabinet, and I think I just, out of curiosity, one day I think I got me and my cousin to try some, and it wasn't the best experience. She puked all night, and it was not very fun, But
that's pretty common, because I can tell you the same thing happened to me. It was gin.
That's the...
And I smell gin today, I will puke.
Yeah.
Still, huh?
Yeah, oh yeah. I was never a fan of gin. Even when I was a heavy drinker, someone goes, "You want a gin and tonic?" Nah. And I'm an alcoholic.
That's saying something.
And I said no. You know what I mean? That's how bad that stuff was.
Yeah.
So you tried it. Your cousin ended up puking, and it wasn't a pleasant experience. But you tried it again.
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't done. She was. I was not done. I kind of put it down. I didn't really sneak back in until later. But, alcohol became normalized for me, I believe, around that age, because I saw it in my dad's cup every night. And he was also he wasn't an angry drunk. He wasn't unstably drunk. To me, he seemed like happier. Like that's when Dad gets happier. And like we'd dance, and he would tell me he loved me, and he would actually cry to me and be like, "I love you so much. Like, you're so beautiful. I'm so glad you're my daughter." Like, he was really happy about it. And yeah.
So that's interesting, because we're talking about kind of associations, right? Back to Pavlov's dog from undergrad psychology class, right? Mm-hmm. Yours and your cousin's was a very negative association, where you have that violent vomiting paired with a particular alcohol, right? For
gin.
you, it was gin, yeah. But in your situation with your dad, alcohol in the house and seeing your dad drink every night sounds to me like, correct me if I'm wrong, was a sort of a positive thing. You just had a nice smile on your face, obviously good memories of Dad being, loving and emotive. A lot of dads don't share their feelings easily, but it sounds like if Dad had a couple drinks, he told you how much he loved you. And did you say he danced
with
you? I mean, it's a beautiful picture.
Yeah.
So for you, I could see how maybe alcohol, the association was positive.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you're dancing with Dad. Alcohol becomes a normal thing. And by normal, that when you see him doing it, you associate that with good times.
Yeah, totally.
So you think to yourself, and once again, I'm like, Dr. Matt, tell me if I'm wrong, there's something good to this alcohol thing.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
And so where does it go from there?
It goes to, well, I think before alcohol really became a thing for me, I started with weed. I think I wanted, around 16 now, like I'm in high school, and I just wanted to party. I wanted to have fun. I did get to high school without a friend group. I did seek community, and I think I wanted to find it through partying. And I started with a guy that I met who was really into smoking weed, and he was like my ticket to parties. So I dated him, and I was introduced to blunts and bongs and going to people's houses to smoke, and like, yeah, I smoked a lot around 16 and 17, got in trouble with that.
But as we've heard on this podcast before, for those seeking a community, a lot of times the party crew or group is very inviting and welcoming. I mean, really, your only pass to get in is willing to try this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, back in our day, a hacky sack helped.
Yeah.
You know, if you had a hacky sack and willing to drink a beer, you're in.
Yeah.
Right?
So you're smoking a lot of weed.
Yeah.
Got in a little trouble with the law or
Almost.
school?
The law. Me and this guy, we were on the hill, like watching the stars and stuff, and he had some weed on his dash, and the cop pulled up behind us and said he smelt it and put us both in handcuffs, and was like, "Whose weed is that?" And he was like, he wouldn't admit that it was his, and they said that if one of us didn't, then we'd both go to jail or whatever. So he ended up admitting it, and they did take me home in handcuffs. They let me keep them on until they took me to my dad's at 3 a.m.
But I assume they're probably trying to scare you straight.
Yeah, they scared my dad really bad. I feel bad about.
What was that like for you? Do you remember how you felt being 16 and being brought home in handcuffs? I mean,
I definitely felt a lot of guilt, especially I felt like I felt lucky, scared, guilty because of the way my dad felt. He got out of bed to the door, like the cop pounding on the door, and I guess my stepmom answered it, and they said, "We need to speak to Savannah's dad," and that's all they said. So my dad gets out of bed, and he said he was walking to the door thinking that they were going to tell him I was dead in a ditch, and like, so he got really emotional about that and was like, "I thought the worst possible outcome, and please don't do that to me ever again." Like, I think I had snuck out too to do that, but yeah, that was really hard for me. It still hurts, to think about how I could have made him feel that night.
Yeah, that's a tough memory. I can tell as you're having it. I also feel like that's sort of standard police officer talk. They don't want to give any real information, so you always assume the worst.
Yep.
And I've as a dad, had a couple of those experiences too, where you just kind of realize maybe we could relearn how to talk to people and say, "Your daughter's fine.
She's in the car.
But I need to talk to Dad."
Yeah.
Right? That's kind of stuff drives me crazy. But yeah, it's interesting to me because, in Casey, we've had other guests on the show, obviously, that go back and they're talking about their first time using and first time getting in trouble. But a lot of times it's a rebellious act.
Yeah.
And they're kind of like, "Whatever, Dad, blah." And they come home and they're angry and all that, But you had kind of this tender relationship with your dad. You were close with your dad. And I could tell there wasn't a rebellion in you going out and using. Why do you think you were sneaking out them? Or maybe it was a rebellion, not against your dad. I don't know. Why were you sneaking out, given that you had this kind of relationship with your dad and smoking weed, up on the hill, watching the stars? I'm using quotes.
Yeah.
So like, why were you doing that?
I definitely did have a great relationship with him. But I really definitely was sneaking out a lot. And it got worse from there. I didn't stop. I don't know. I always did whatever I wanted to do and nothing was going to stop me. It didn't matter. Like, no, I want to go party. I want to go have fun. I needed thrill that bad. You know, I had to find it.
So you didn't stop sneaking out. You said you started sneaking out more.
Yeah.
And where does that take you?
So that takes me to age 19 is where it really took off. I found a friend group who wanted to party like me. And one of my friends was staying with his grandparents, and his grandparents left for like 3 months. And he was staying in a mansion on the hill, a big mansion all to himself. And we were like, hey, we can throw parties here. And we did. And they were the biggest parties in my small town. This town's, Idaho Falls is small. I think it's around 60,000 people. But yeah, no, we had crazy, huge parties. And that was where I was introduced to Adderall. Binge drinking, that's when I started drinking every day for fun. Like, they would call me, I would turn up on Tuesday. It was Turnt Tuesdays. You know, we just didn't care. There was nothing else to do, there's nothing else to do. Just be, like, wild and free, you know? Mm-hmm.
Part of that's adolescence, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
totally.
I think partly you're saying a bit of your personality was to be kind of oppositional and do what you want to do. But I think, I know, we go through developmental periods psychologically, and adolescence is a period of time of rebellion, or at least pushing back and wanting to explore the world. Like, it sounds like you were like, hey, I want to go out and see what there is out there and see who's out there and what we can do, and let's party and have fun. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, it sounds like instead of having to sneak around, now you guys found this big house that you could do it in all the time. Yeah. How did that accelerate your use?
It just went up from there. And then after the grandparents came back, the house was destroyed. I felt really bad about it.
Was it really?
It was awful. Yeah. So bad. Yeah, he got in a lot of trouble, but just because grandparents came back, like, the party couldn't end. So I did have a group now. Like, I had all the people who wanted to do that with me.
You found your team.
Yeah, and we'd find parties, and that was fun too. That was adventurous, you know, like, who knows of parties tonight? We went somewhere different every Friday, every Saturday, and it was I just needed it.
But I want to stop you there for a second, because I think we just glossed over Adderall.
Oh yeah, we did kind of.
And, you said you were introduced to Adderall. Now, we've had a few people on here that, their DOC was Adderall. But what was the selling point to you about Adderall? Because I know there's a lot of family members of addicts who listen to this podcast. What is Adderall? I mean, what is it designed for in the party world?
I was introduced to it at that mansion. My friends were snorting it. Actually, some random people. They were crushing it up and snorting it. And my friend was like, can she have some? And I was just down to do it. So I did. And it was like an instant rush of adrenaline. It was like drinking 5 energy drinks. And then on top of that, it makes you feel like you're on top of the world in a way, and that you could go on in conversation, and it's fun to keep talking and to keep moving. It's like it amplifies everything. But what it's used for, I sought it out through the doctors. Like, I read what ADD was on Google, and I was like, I'm going to go get some prescribed to me. And I did read that it's to help with like concentration and
ADHD.
Yeah, it's used for good things. But
no, we know that there is a design purpose for it.
Yeah.
But in the party world.
But what she's talking about is one of the reasons that currently today it's one of the biggest problems for kids and adolescents in substance abuse, because There are a lot of kids who've been diagnosed with a neurodevelopmental disorder like ADHD, which means they struggle establishing and sustaining attention. They may be very bright, but they're not getting good grades because they can't stick with things for very long. It also and because of that, you kind of can become hyperactive, a certain subset of kids, and so you got this hyperactive, inattentive kid who may be bright enough to do the work, and so a medication like methylphenidate or Adderall, which will, increase that neurostimulation to kind of bring you up to level. Mm-hmm. That's the goal, is like, I want to be able to pay attention as well as the average other kid. And so we add this neurostimulant that brings them up to level. But if you're already at level, or if you take a gigantic dose, and especially if you don't take it as prescribed, so it is not prescribed to snort, obviously that just immediately puts it right into your bloodstream. And it has both a euphoric and an energetic sort of effect, similar to other neurostimulants like cocaine.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So with the help of Adderall, you've turned your partying up to a different level.
Yeah. Also, the Adderall was my friend when I was hungover, or when I wanted to keep drinking all night, but I didn't want to pass out. It would keep me up, and I could drink more. And sometimes if I was too drunk, or I was feeling it, I could take some Adderall, and then it would wake me up again, and I could keep drinking.
Is this the first stimulant drug you played around with? The others, alcohol's a depressant, weed mellows you out, but this was one that you could use to keep using the others?
Yeah, totally.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the mansion closes. You guys are now party hopping, finding a different place every Friday and Saturday. Mm-hmm. You have found your team, and you guys are just partying all the time.
Yeah.
And at any point, does your family go, "Hey, sis"?
No. Not once.
Does that seem weird?
Yeah. There was one time I was like, "Hey, Dad, I am partying, and I want to be able to tell you about it." And he just shot that down and was like, "I don't want to hear about that. No."
And this is when you were under age of 21.
Yeah. But I wanted to share it.
Why did you want to share it with your dad?
I think because I had a friend whose parents were like, "Oh, if you guys are going to drink tonight, stay here." And his mom came down with water and ibuprofen for us in the morning. Was like, "How's your headaches?" I think I wanted that from my dad.
Yeah, you were connected with your dad, and I think in a way, even though you were doing something, you were testing his approval or wanting his approval and support, and it sounded like you liked being around your dad. So how did that make you feel to have him kind of throw up the barrier of denial? I don't want to know about that.
It definitely hurt, but I just turned around and kept doing what I was doing. I didn't sit there and feel it. That's for sure. Yeah.
So you numbed it out.
Yeah.
You were like, that hurt.
All right.
So I'm going to go back to partying.
See you later, yeah.
So you keep partying.
Yeah, I did.
And how does that go?
It went great. It was honestly, I have a lot of really cool memories, but what ended up slowing down the partying was around 20, I met someone. I met my ex, and he took me out on a date, and I was 20, we went to Chili's, and he was buying me alcohol all night because I wanted it, and he was older. He was actually 28. And that, just since day one, I kind of just really fell for him. And he had a car and money. He could buy me alcohol, and he was gorgeous, all these things. Just, it was a perfect trap, and I was definitely in it. And we ended up dating. And he was officially my boyfriend, I think, after 2 months. But that was also where I even caught red flags of, this man probably isn't the best person for me. This guy's kind of a jerk. But I definitely did not listen to those flags. And for about 4 or 5 months into our relationship, my dad came to me and said, "Hey, I'm moving to North Carolina." He got a job promotion, and that was it. And one day he was just gone. My dad was gone. And I was not ready for my dad to be gone and and his house, you know, I had to get all my stuff out and then also around that time, my mom moved out of her home into her boyfriend's house. So my other childhood home wasn't mine anymore. I couldn't go there if I needed to. And those were like my sanctuaries, my safe places, you know. And then, you know, also around that time, my older brother moved to New York. And then my younger brother moved to Pocatello. So all within, I think, maybe 2 years total, my family is just gone. And I'm with this guy. And I really, truly fell in love with this guy. I really did. But I kind of just moved in with him. And he had 3 kids. And don't get me wrong, I completely fell in love with his kids. Absolutely loved them. I loved being around them. I loved being with him and his family. It was like a new family. Mine all just left. And not only did my dad just leave, he left and he kind of just stopped talking to me. And it's really sad. It's really sad. And it still continues to this day where it's hard for me to connect with him or reach out to him. And I never really get phone calls or texts, and it's been really hard for me. So while I was with...
Can I ask, is your dad still drinking?
Yes.
Regularly?
Yeah.
And is he with your stepmom still?
Yeah.
Okay.
Took them with him, yeah.
And how many years ago was this that Dad moved to North Carolina?
I think about 5
years ago?
4 or 5 now, yeah.
So pretty consistently for the last 4 or 5 years, he's just been sort of more and more out of your life?
Yeah.
Have you ever... Because, I mean, this is kind of I'm feeling sort of out of sorts here listening to your story. I know it's your story, but you've kind of got me wrapped up in this whole closeness with your dad as a young girl, and now without any major fallout or reason that you've shared, you and Dad are disconnected. Is there something that happened that you think explains that, or is it a mystery to you as well?
It's a complete mystery. I have not approached him. I haven't said, hey, why don't you talk to me? You know, like, because that's a hard question for me it's hard for me to say it right now.
Yeah.
I definitely will need help when it's time to approach that, you know. It is time. It's always been time, but, I mean, for the last 5 years that he's been gone, it's been so much easier to just drink, you know.
Let me ask you this, because you said you lived in a small town, around 60,000 people.
Yeah.
I grew up in a small town, and we know who the partiers are. We knew who the troublemakers were. And that kind of gossip and word spreads around town.
Yeah.
So what was the town saying about you and your friends? Was there talk, or do you think you guys were flying underneath the radar?
I'm sure there was talk. I heard rumors about myself, for sure, that were not true, obviously. A lot of people knew my name, but they had no idea who I was. Mm-hmm. A lot of them. Yeah.
Do you think your dad was sensitive to that? He had heard those? Are there things, do you think that played a role at all in Dad saying, I don't want to hear about what you're doing?
I don't know. I do know that in Dad's life, he was out partying too. He had his own crowd and his own name out there.
Yeah.
They called him Steffler. That's my last name. Like, Steffler, he's out, you know, he's having beers all the time.
So you're now living with your boyfriend who showed you some red flags from the get-go, but you didn't address them. Mm-mm. You actually moved in with him and his 3 kids. And you said you felt this kind of safety and liked being around him. And as you said in your own words, kind of a new family.
Yeah.
And were you drinking a lot with him? Did you kind of abandon your team, your partiers, and just kind of dedicate your time to him and his kids and keep partying?
100%. I did abandon my community I created for a lot of reasons. One of them being I was in the beginning just so in the honeymoon stage, but also he was slowly possessed me, and tried to control those areas of my life, and he succeeded. I slowly let him. Yeah.
So what sorts of things did so he stopped? Give us an example, maybe. Like, I think I know what you're going to say, but like, what's an example that stands out in your mind of where he was really kind of crossing the line and controlling what a normal person might do on their own?
He would make it really difficult for me to hang out with my friends. When I would want to, he would make them sound like they weren't good for me, or like that they weren't supportive enough for me, or they weren't worth my time and stuff. And in my head, I knew it wasn't true. And for a while, I did do it anyway. I would see my friends anyways. But then slowly, over time, it wasn't worth fighting. And his reasons got louder and meaner. And
sort of sounds like how a dad would talk to a daughter about their friends.
Yeah. Yeah.
He's good, huh?
Well, I mean, he's 28. You're 20.
Yeah.
He already has his own kids, so he is a dad. Your dad is sort of fading off into less and less of a relationship with you, and literally picks up and leaves. Kind of sounds like you found another sort of father-type figure, and in fact, he's controlling you like a dad would, telling you your friends are no good and you shouldn't hang out with them. I mean, that sounds pretty dad-like.
Yeah.
Is that a new thought of yours, or you kind of realized that already?
With the therapy that I went through, this has been brought. It's been brought to my, yeah. And
and I think colloquially we say things like daddy issues or mommy issues, that kind of stuff. But everybody has to. The healthiest among us have figured out how to evolve in our relationship with our parents and feel comfortable with that. Yeah. And if we have a difficult change in our relationship with our parents, they abandon us, we abandon them, there's conflict that's unresolved, whatever. That is such a primal and primitive relationship in your life that you really need to resolve it. And when we don't, we're all susceptible to having surrogate parents that we try to work out those dynamics with. So, I don't think anybody's really immune to that process because it's so human.
Yeah.
So are you drinking daily while you're living with this new family?
Not quite. I did end up getting pregnant when I was maybe 22. And I was stoked. I was like, yes. Okay, this can be my life. Also at that time, I was feeling really awkward with my life, and I had no idea where to go, or I had no sense of purpose or drive to go to school or anything. I did try to go to school, but it didn't work out. I didn't know what to do with myself or what my life was going to be. So I ended up getting pregnant, and I was like, this is what my life can be. I can add to this family, and we can get a house, and I can be a mom. That's what I'll do, And I did find out that I miscarried it, and it was really hard because I found out at 8 weeks that I was pregnant, and then I went back 4 weeks later because I was bleeding, and I was like, okay, this is not supposed to be happening. I went in there and I requested that they looked at it really closely, and so I could see, on the screen, if there was a baby in there, if it was still alive, and it was gone. And actually, it had already been gone. When I found out I was pregnant, it was already dead. And so for 4 weeks, I was changing my brain, thinking of my new life, and I was really building up excitement for it. And then to find out that actually, no, the whole time that wasn't going to happen. And the doctors that told you they could hear the heartbeat at 8 weeks when I first got there, it wasn't real, So that was really traumatic for me. I went straight into depression. I didn't leave the bedroom for, oh my God, it had to have been at least a month. Totally just in bed. And I wasn't drinking. I was just fully in that dark depression.
Mourning, really.
Yeah.
Right?
Grieving. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, all those things. That's a true trauma for a woman to lose a baby and miscarry a baby in that way. Especially, it sounds to me like you feel sort of duped because you were making all those adjustments in your heart and in your mind, thinking about becoming a mother and having that redefine your life, just to find out that never would have been an option because of the early loss of the baby and the poor medical assessment that you had, anyway, can't think of the right word. That would send anybody into a real depression and a grief and loss. Yeah.
So what brings you out of the bedroom after a month?
I don't know. I don't really remember. I don't think I ended up quitting my job, and I don't think I got back to work for like 8 months. I think I kind of that's when I fell into dependency of my ex. I just lived there, and I was just there, but that's when drinking began. That's when I wanted to drink often through the week, especially the weekend. I found all the reasons, to get alcohol, and it was my friend at that point, at that time. It was a daily thing, and that's where the blur even begins, like 23, 24. I don't remember being 24. I swear, it was just, that's all my life became. So this relationship that I was in, it did continue to just get worse and worse. He became really mentally abusive, very verbally abusive, to the point where I was living in a constant fight, flight, or freeze stage. I was always trying to leave. When we'd argue and it would be so bad, I just feel it in my body that I need to run. And I'd get out of the house and I'd drive off in my car and just take some time. And I did always go back, but it even got to the point where I was leaving so much that he would start chasing me, and it was getting really toxic. And my dad did reach out to me once on maybe my 24th birthday and was like, "Hey, come stay out here. I heard you're trying to get away from Gabe. Come here. Come with me. And stay with me. I'll buy you a one-way ticket. You can stay as long as you want and figure some stuff out." So I took that. I went, I stayed, and it was awesome. I have great memories of that. But it was the beginning it was where I drank in the mornings. There was alcohol all the time. We were drinking together every day. I was sneaking it in the mornings. I stayed for maybe 2 or 3 months, and that's all I did. I drank. I didn't feel anything. I didn't process anything. I mean, I did feel a lot. I felt a lot of sadness and anger and grief, but I didn't feel it out and through. I drank about it.
Did you open up to your dad about the loss of your pregnancy?
I don't think so.
Was that something you were just keeping all private to yourself?
I think so. Yeah, I don't remember.
How about your mom? Did you ever tell her?
I don't know. I don't remember. I must have not. Or I was just so in the depression. I was so depressed. It was too hard to talk.
Yeah.
That's a pretty heavy thing to hold all yourself.
Yeah.
And never process and never talk through.
And what you're describing happens to people more often than I think we would like to believe or to know, that when a person becomes truly clinically depressed, they think of your body as a system. The system starts to become depressed. It starts to shut down. It's very effortful to do things as simple as talk.
Oh, yeah.
And without talking and without connecting, you're not processing, like you said. And of course, therapists are there for people, but sometimes your first and best therapist after a trauma experience is your mom or your dad or somebody that you can open up and talk to. And if you weren't, expressing yourself and connecting with them, it sounds like you were keeping that all to yourself, and your system was getting more and more depressed.
Yeah. It was really, really dark.
So you started drinking in the daytime,
Yeah.
the morning, the afternoon with your dad for about 3 months, you said.
Yeah. And I was ready to go home.
But where is home?
Idaho Falls.
I know, but are you still talking with Gabe?
Yeah. No, I didn't really talk to him the whole time. I was trying to leave him, but I ended up back together with him. And I really thought I was going to leave him that time, but I didn't.
So you moved back in.
Yeah, I stayed with my mom for a minute, but then the day I saw him again, I was back with him. He was sick too. I actually gained a lot of weight, and he lost a lot of weight. Like, so we were both not okay alone either, you know, like.
He was sick with an illness, or he was sick with a substance abuse problem, or depression, or
depression,
all of it?
Anxiety,
Yeah.
Separation, codependency. He was sick without me. He was using because I left, you know, like he couldn't be alone.
Well, it seems clear that this is a very codependent, sort of classic codependent relationship where both of you are playing out the gender roles that are typical for a codependent relationship, and those can be like super glue. It's really can be almost impossible sometimes to feel like you can get away from that relationship.
It completely felt impossible. It toward the end, it was my life. That was how my life was going to be, including waking up every day and drinking. That I had to drink, like. So I get back with him, and the morning drinking, it never stopped. That's where it started and never ended. From 23 to 25 is when I stopped. But yeah, just, and then the constant partying every weekend continued. Going out, I love to go out. I did end up getting a job as a server. But I was so unhappy with my relationship, with my life, with my family, with everything, every part of it. I didn't feel like myself anymore. It got to the point where I was too loud for him. I have a really loud laugh, and I love to laugh, but it was too loud for him, and he would like shush me, and that I think was the most that affected me so much. It hurt me so bad to be shushed and like, no, just stop talking, you know? No, like he would, when I would try to share how I would feel, you know, that wasn't cool or like allowed or accepted either. So I really got shushed to the point where my soul was not aflame anymore. Like I was just a walking zombie. And to make it better was I would drink about it every day. And then to the point where I couldn't get out of bed without drinking. Like I had beers from the night before, half full on purpose. So when I would wake up to go to the bathroom, I had some alcohol to drink. Like I started getting sick to the point where I would throw up all the time. Because my stomach was just sick of it. My body was so sick of it. Like, I got to the point where when I would put food in my mouth, something really weird would happen in my stomach. Like, I was starving because I couldn't swallow food. Like, my gag reflex was so bad that I literally couldn't swallow food. So I ended up losing a lot of weight. Because I could only consume alcohol and maybe drink like smoothies if I could get it down. But yeah.
Well, it destroys the lining of your stomach and your stomach and intestines' ability to process food normally when you're drinking that heavily. If I get you right, you were drinking from morning till night for 2 years straight, plus on the weekends partying, which I assume still included things like Adderall and other drugs. And so, after a couple of years of that, your intestines and stomach lining and everything can't handle it anymore. And so you're right. You probably, whatever you could put through it just kind of went right through you and did very little nourishing. Even if you were having a good, healthy smoothie, it probably didn't really get absorbed anymore like it should have. Yeah. And so, vomiting, your body's toxic at this point, trying to reject anything that you're putting into it because the alcohol is so damaging. So that's a dangerous place. Now we're at you're mentally and emotionally depressed, obviously, but now, your physiological system is starting to shut down.
Yeah. And but I still had to drink, and I still had to get vodka down. So I'm at this point where the withdrawals, I wake up with panic and anxiety and withdrawals, and I need alcohol so I can get to zero, so I can see, literally so I can see things because my vision is blurry. So I'd walk to work shaking, and on the way to work there was a Target, and I'd go to Target every day, I'd buy a bottle of wine and a Gatorade, and I'd go in the bathroom of Target, open the bottle of wine, pour it in the Gatorade bottle because it fit, and I'd have to sit there for maybe 5-10 minutes and get some down, and it was awful. I hated it, hated the smell of it. I did not want to drink it, but I kind of had to.
What did it do for you?
It leveled me out. It made it so I stopped shaking, and it made it so I could see straight, and I didn't feel like puking anymore. It's odd, isn't it? So I'd drink half a bottle of wine in the Target bathroom, and then I'd walk the rest of the way to work and drink the rest of the wine while I was rolling my silverware before I'd start serving tables. That's how a morning went for me for the year and a half. And then I'd usually work all day, and the restaurant would close from 2:30 to 4, and at that time I'd walk to the liquor store and drink some vodka, and on my break, probably pass out because I just drink a lot, wake up, walk to work again, and by that time I was I had all the alcohol I needed, I was level, I was good, and I'd drink through the shift, and then my ex would pick me up, and he'd be and I'd be let's get some beers. And we would. And I really did my best to hide it from him. Eventually, bottles can't stay hidden forever. And
so he wasn't drinking during the day, even though he was struggling with depression, anxiety, or was he also doing the same thing you were doing?
He would drink during the day.
Yeah.
I don't know how much. I don't know if he would do liquor. I know he'd drink beer, but I don't think he was as severe as I was. He definitely wasn't shaking as bad as I was and puking as much as I was, but he was.
And then you also were working in an environment, and I don't mean to stereotype all restaurants, but I mean, what I know about folks that work in restaurants is there's a lot of drinking throughout the shifts and smoking weed on breaks, and that's kind of a normal part of that. Did you feel like that would apply to your restaurant where you were at?
It was definitely a safe place for that.
Yeah, so nobody's going to be like, oh my gosh, she smells like alcohol, because everybody's sort of, that's the culture of many restaurants. Casey's giving me the stink eye like I'm throwing restaurants under the bus.
That's why a lot of people end up in that thing, because there is alcohol around. As long as you're not slurring your words and you can get the tray to the table, you're doing okay, But it doesn't sound like you're doing okay. I mean, it sounds like you're holding on for everything and just trying to get even and get to another day.
Yeah.
And so he'd pick you up afterwards. You guys would go have a few beers, and then you would start the day all over again.
Yeah. And no talking about your feelings either. No fighting. We would fight so much, but
did you have a desire to reach out to anybody? I mean, to me, this is a lonely story, Casey, of a young woman in her young adult life who really has sort of failed to find your path. And to me, it feels like you may have wanted to reach out, but mom's not really available. When you spent time with dad didn't go there with you either. Your partner is a codependent person who's got his own struggles and, maybe that hypermasculinity, so he can't talk about his feelings. Did you have a best friend, somebody did you have a desire to let this out, or did you just feel alone with it?
I really, truly had nobody. I really didn't. I mean, I did. I could have. There were people I could have said, hey, I need help. But those words never came to my head. Like, I was truly, really sick and really in it. And I really thought that my relationship was even normal in a way, and that was my life. And even toward the end there, I ended up finally going to the hospital because I could not drink because I was so sick and I was shaking so bad, and they had to like help me step on the scale because I was like quivering. And that's where I found the hospital could help me get through withdrawals, and I'd be there, and they would give me pills that would stop the shaking, and I'd feel better, and then I'd walk out of there and I was good, and then I would go back to drinking. I think I went to the hospital maybe 3 times. And at one point, at one of the hospital visits, the doctor was like, I heard him say, she's an alcoholic, to another doctor. And I was like, what? An alcoholic? I never said, yeah, I am, or no, I'm not. I kind of just heard the word. And I was like, And then he came back and he was like, hey, your levels aren't looking that good. You know, it's understandable that you're having panic and your heart feels like it's going to explode, because I felt like I was going to die all the time too. And he said it's normal because you're abusing alcohol and you need to find God or something. He straight up said, you need to find God. And I was like, you know, and I walked out of there and I drank more. So there was a time though where it happened for me, and it's so exciting because
I can tell, because you all of a sudden went from very somber, very soft-spoken to where there's an actual glow in your face and a smile on there. So is this when it turns around for you?
It does, yeah.
Tell me about it.
So January 2020, my birthday is January 11th. I remember waking up that day in the house with him and his kids, and I woke up and I was like, I'm just not going to talk today. It's just not worth it. It's not worth talking because I don't want to argue, and I just want to get through the day. So we ended up getting through the day. It was hectic and crazy with the kids, but that's to be expected, you know, they're kids. And we get to my birthday dinner, and I was already salty because I didn't get to pick where we went because the kids wanted, you know, like, which is fine. But I'm just angry, you know, and sad. And we're at my birthday dinner, and he said something to me that was just it was a normal thing to say, something really rude and kind of messed up to me and disrespectful. And I heard it differently that day. And I was like, I don't like that you said that, you know? And then his daughter was even like, you have been in the worst mood today. And something happened in that moment. And it's hard to describe how I felt because it was so powerful. I just, out of nowhere, I felt a fire in my gut, like an undeniable flame just burst in my body, and I was like awake or something. Like I stood up from the table and I just walked out the door, and that was the last time they all ever saw me. If I could describe what the feeling was saying, it was saying, get out. Like, and it truly, I can say that it was bigger than me, and I feel like it wasn't me. I don't know what it was to this day. Maybe it was me. I think it might have been my soul screaming, finally saying, get out. And I got up and I left, and I walked in the snow to another bar, and I got to the bar and I started crying, obviously, like, give me vodka, drinking, called my mom, and I was like, Mom, I just left the table. I don't know what to do. And she was like, well, maybe you could go back and say sorry. And I was like, no, I can't go back. I don't know where to go, but I can't go back. And she was like, okay, well, just let me know you're okay. And I ended up calling his sister because she was my good friend, and she took me downtown. We're at another bar. I'm just sitting there with this fire in my gut, like, and I've been feeling darkness for years, for days, just dread and anxiety nothing like this. It wasn't light, but it wasn't darkness. It was something else. And so I'm at this bar with his sister, and I'm still drinking, drinking more and more about my life. And my really good friend, his name's Blake, he walks in the door. I've known Blake for way before I met my ex. And I had not seen him for the 2 years. And I was like, Blake, it's my birthday. Let's go out and let's go dancing. He's like, yeah, let's go dancing. He takes me dancing. And me and Blake, we dance all night. And I'm just drinking my life, just drinking, And he's dancing with me. And we're just sweaty and having so much fun. And he was only drinking Sprite the whole time. And we were the last two on the dance floor. And he was drinking Sprite. And that was it. And I was like, you were dancing like me, like just as hard as I was. We just had the best time I've had in so long, and you're not even drunk. So the night ended. We leave the bar, and he's like, where do you want to go? Where do you want me to take you? And I was like, and that feeling comes back. My life something still needs to change in that moment. And I was like, I don't know where to go. I don't know. And that was the first time I said, I drink too much. And I want to know how you dance without alcohol. That's a miracle to me. That's impossible. How do you do that? And he told me that he'd been sober for 2 years and that he went to treatment and AA and detox. And I was like, well, I don't know what to do. And he's like, let's make a list and tomorrow we'll do it. I went home with him to his place, and we made a list, and it said, seek AA, schedule detox, and tell mom. So the next day, the first thing we did was tell my mom. And she just, I don't really remember what I said, but I remember walking in and saying, where's your wine? I need to talk to you. And I don't really remember, but I told her that I drank too much and I needed help. And I said that Blake has been sober and he's done it and I want to be like him. And so she and him, they talked about it. He told her that he went to Brighton Recovery. Mm-hmm. And she was like, let's leave tomorrow. And I was like, tomorrow? Oh, tomorrow? Really? Like tomorrow? And I did. I didn't go back to the house, my ex's house, to get any of my stuff because I truly felt that if I were to go back there in any way, he would have tried to make me stay or tried to talk me out of it or would have fought with me, or because I had gone so long of him stopping me from leaving the house or taking my keys from me so I wouldn't leave. I tried to leave so many times and he stopped me. So I left everything I owned there. I left my shoes, my clothes, my makeup, my jewelry, everything. And my mom took me to detox here in Utah the next day. And I was drinking on the way there, just enough to keep the withdrawals at bay. And I got to detox. I was there for 5 days, and it was a pretty positive experience. I was really scared, but I was able to just lay in bed and watch TV and eat candy. And withdrawals are it's such torture. Mm-hmm.
We've had
awful.
many people on the podcast who said, I prayed for death because I was afraid of withdrawals. And that's
scary.
showing the power of that.
Yeah.
So you're in detox for 5 days. And there's a lot of people who go to detox for 5 days and they think that's what recovery is.
Yeah, that's what I thought it was in the hospital those few times,
Uh-huh.
But no, that is not. That's the huge first step. Such an important step to take. But, yeah. Oh, so what happened was Brighton wasn't available. My mom's calling Brighton because that's what
you knew.
That's what
That's what your friend had done.
Yeah. And they weren't available, but they recommended Pinnacle Recovery. And we're on the way to detox, and that's all happening on the way. And Mary Kay gets a hold of my mom and is like, no, don't go to the U for detox, go here. I believe it was Turning Point. Or Next Step, I think. Next Step Detox. And then she was on the phone with my mom and asked to speak with me. And I took the phone. I didn't know who I was going to talk to. I didn't know really what was going on. I honestly didn't know what detox was.
Yeah.
I didn't know what treatment was. I heard of rehab, but I didn't know what it was.
Yeah.
But anyway, I get on the phone with Mary Kay, and she's like, hey, I just want to let you know that it's going to be okay. You're going to be okay, and you're coming to a really safe place that I hold in my heart, and this place, it means the world to me, and it's going to be all right. And I just started bawling because that was the first time I heard that, you know?
And you needed to hear that.
Yeah. So after 5 days of detox, I get to Pinnacle, and I honestly don't remember the first 3 days.
Nobody does.
Or actually the first day. I remember the third day.
They showed you where the good ice is, and they let you sleep.
Yeah. You know, I didn't sleep. I walked into Pinnacle with my hands up. Truly, I was like, someone help me. But I also was like, who's got the answers in this place? Where are the answers at? Like, who has them? When do I talk to somebody? I need to talk. So yeah, I jumped right into groups. I jumped right in.
How many days did you do in there?
I did 53.
What about aftercare?
I did 90 days of IOP. Oh, there's a gap there. I did 53 days. I went home to Idaho to visit for a week. At the end of the week, I was ready to move into sober living as well and do IOP. But the last day of that week was the day the pandemic hit. And everyone was like, return home. Airports are shutting down. Don't leave your homes. Everything's shutting down. And I was like, what? Like, I'm supposed to move into a new state, a new place by myself. I called the sober living and I was like, can you guys wait? Can I move in after this pandemic thing, you know? And they let me wait. So I ended up quarantining in Idaho for 3 months with Blake and his family in their cabin. So there was a gap there. I did spend my first 3 months of sobriety quarantined during the pandemic. And finally in April or May, when places opened up again, is when I moved into sober living so I could get a job. But yeah, that's when I did sober living and I started IOP. I did 90 days of IOP, and that's where my independence began. That's where my life on my own that I truly wanted. The whole time I was with him, I wanted to be alone and independent and see what it was like, you know? And I was doing it. And I was sober and feeling my feelings and taking the tools and things that I learned that were taught to me at Pinnacle, and really applying it.
So where do you live now?
Well, I just moved out of sober living the end of January, and I've moved into my first apartment in downtown Salt Lake. It's like close to here, and it's so good that the first 3 days my brain was telling me, like, this can't be real. You know, like, your life isn't stable and happy and fluffy like this. Your life is chaos and depression and sad. So, like, there's going to be a fire, you know, like, this is going to burn down at some point soon. Mm. Like, and those were really powerful thoughts that kind of just were on autopilot. And I've had a really positive experience with my sober life. Honestly, I've learned how to create my own positivity and create fun and live with light. And but it was a dark moment that my head kind of took over.
Yeah.
But I think I'm coming out of it now. It's been like 2 weeks, I think, that I've been in there. And I'm finally starting to settle and think, like, hey, yeah, this is mine.
It's amazing how powerful our mindsets can become over the course of our life and our experiences. You know, there's that old saying, you know, your perception is reality. And your reality, the perception that you had of your reality all those years was just that. Mm-hmm. It was depressing. It was dark. I get the sense as you tell your story that you had kind kind of rolled over and accepted this is just how my life's going to be. It's going to be addiction and misery and unhappiness, and that's just how it's going to be. And then you had that powerful epiphany that kind of jump-started you. I love that visualization of you just like setting your napkin down and walking out and never coming back. I think that is amazing. But then, you're still so fresh in this world of sobriety and recovery that old mindset is going to kind of come back on you once in a while. And when something good happens, you might feel like, but when's the other shoe going to drop? Mm-hmm. And the key is, no, you're rewiring your brain. You are literally physiologically rewiring your brain when you use the skills that you were taught at Pinnacle, when you live with light, like you said, when you allow yourself to have that smile. Doesn't she have the biggest, best smile?
Yeah.
And that loud laugh, and no one can tell you that you can't be loud and happy. And you're rewiring all of those years of negativity and depression. So I'm just going to throw a little warning out there. You may have that once in a while. That's okay. You just have to, as soon as you have those thoughts, remind yourself, that is my old brain. Mm-hmm. That's the old brain. That's those old wires firing, and they're just going to keep fading away the more I live this healthy, happy, sober life.
And the thing I love about her story is that inspiration comes from crazy places. You never know when, you never know where, you never know why. But who'd have thought that a Sprite in Blake's dance moves? Think about it.
Yeah.
Totally. I mean, that's really what it is. It's a Sprite and Blake's dance moves that you said, you're sober?
Yeah.
And yes. I mean, I think that is so great. I think that is. And I think you've got a true friend in Blake and his family. And it sounds like your mom stepped up. And I'm very grateful that you were willing to come and share your story. It's not the typical story we hear. And it never is the typical story. But
I would say I love the fact that you had, instead of sort of a, what do you always call them, a low point?
A rock bottom?
Rock bottom. I mean, I think you'd been living sort of a rock bottom for a while, but instead of a rock bottom, you had this kind of burning experience that just kicked off your ability to just turn it right around. I think that's such a great part of your story.
You know, a lot of times in recovery, people say, I got just sick and tired of being sick and tired. Mm-hmm. You know, and in a sense, that's what it is. Your body, your mind, your soul, something said, we out. You know? And I hope Gabe is doing okay, and I hope he figures it out. But in recovery, it's okay to be selfish. I put it on my Facebook the other day. Is it selfish to put your recovery first? I don't think so. I really don't think so. And this is your world and your life. And if you're not an advocate for it, somebody else is going to be. So you might as well be the captain of your ship.
Yeah.
And go out there and get what you want. Because it's out there, and it's there for the taking. And it sounds like you're doing that. And that's why I'm so proud and so glad you stopped by and shared your story today. And we want to keep in touch with you and see how this journey goes. Because I expect great things from you, not to put pressure on you. But I think you're doing wonderful.
Thank you.
Dr. Matt?
Well, if our little catchphrase, the opposite of addiction is
connection,
has never been more true. Like, I think you finding these connections with Blake, with Gabe's sister, with your mom, with recovery. Obviously, those connections are vital in your recovery process, and I can't imagine you're not going to keep finding more positive people to be connected with.
And thank you for letting us be a part of that. You're listening to Project Recovery. It is a KSL podcast.
The contents of this program are for informational purposes only. The program is not intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always seek the advice of your physician, licensed therapist, or other qualified health provider with any questions you may have regarding a medical condition. Never disregard professional medical advice or delay in seeking it because of something you've heard on this program. KSL does not recommend or endorse any specific tests, physicians, products, procedures, opinions, or other information that may be mentioned on the program. Reliance on any information provided on the program is solely at your own risk.
A stranger with a gun came upon two teens taking pictures under a rising full moon. But violence is only the beginning of this story.
Sometimes I thought, there are no miracles. Yeah, there are, and this is a big one.
I'm Amy Donaldson, and I've spent my career talking about how lives are undone by violence. The Letter is a podcast about how lives are remade. Follow The Letter at theletterpodcast.com or wherever you get your podcasts.